So most guitar players, especially in rock and metal, practice their scales like this. First they play them up, and then they play them down. And of course, that's a great workout for your picking technique. But let's be honest, does this help with familiarizing ourselves with the scale? So with the sound and the color of the scale and the creative possibilities we can unlock within it when we're improvising or writing guitar solos? I think we can agree that the answer is no. This is a pure technical kind of workout. But if you feel kind of stuck playing the same licks over and over again when you're improvising or writing guitar solos, I have some much better and more effective exercises for you today. Let's pick the key of G minor for today's video. Here's an awesome sounding and quite simple exercise that you can practice that will help you with playing more creatively right away. Alright, so for this first exercise I was just working with the G minor scale, but instead of playing it like this, so just note by note ascending and descending, I wanted to familiarize myself with an awesome intervallic pattern played throughout the scale. And for this first exercise I chose the 6th. That's a pretty interesting sounding interval that you don't hear that much, maybe in rock and metal. And the easiest way of understanding the theory behind this is when I show you the notes of the scale right here. So these are the notes in the G minor scale. I'm just playing the first note, that's G in this case, and then I'm counting up 6 notes so that I get the 6th. So if I count up 6 notes from the first note from G, I have G, A, E flat, C, D, E flat right here on the 6th fret on the A string. So my first 6th interval is a minor 6th interval. That's because I only want to work with the notes that I have in the scale. So I can't play a major 6th interval because I don't have E in that scale. I have E flat in the scale. Then I go up 1 note in the scale. I'm playing A on the 5th fret on the E string, and I'm counting up 6 notes in the scale once again. So A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. So my next interval is a minor 6th once again, but instead of playing it like this, on the 5th and on the 8th fret, I'm following the scale pattern and I'm playing it like this. Which sounds really cool right away, because when you're hearing guitar solos, especially in rock and metal, you don't really hear those big intervallic jumps like this. It's all very closely connected, often playing the scale up and down. So this already sounds great. Let's do one more note. For the 3rd note on the low E string, that's B flat. That's the 3rd note in the scale. When I count up 6 notes again, I have B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. And that's actually quite interesting now, because that's not a minor 6th interval, that's a major 6th interval. So we have minor 6th, major 6th. And once again, the reason why this is a different interval, we're still counting up 6 notes starting from the 3rd note in the scale, but by the way this scale is structured with the notes you can find in it, that results in a major 6th interval for us. Once again, instead of playing it like this, I'm following the scale pattern. So I'm playing B flat right here on the low E string and G on the D string. And the pattern for the first 3 notes of the scale sounds like this. And that's a really cool melodic sounding pattern that you can use. In fact, the next very practical exercise and riff that I prepared for you is based on this concept of jumping between intervals, 6 in this case. Check out how cool this can sound when you work with this creatively. Alright, for this cool sounding practical riff, I just took the first measure of the full scale exercise where you were playing through the entire scale in 6, and I followed it by simply alternate picking the root note, classic metal cliche, right? So I think this is actually a really cool melodic riff, because most of the time when you think about metal riffs, You just think about power chords. But when you really familiarize yourself with scales this way and you can visualize those intervallic jumps, can sound really, really cool, not just in your guitar solos, but also in your riffs when you work with patterns like this. The only thing that's a bit tricky is avoiding string noise right here. So I don't want these notes to overlap when I'm playing riffs like this, because I'm usually playing with quite some distortion for my metal riffs. So when you're practicing the second exercise, make sure to focus on the picking hand. It's alternate picking all the way through. And you want to make sure to skip between the strings without getting stuck in between them. So this is actually a pretty cool string skipping exercise as well. And I have some much cooler and even more helpful exercises prepared for you today. Before we check them out, I just wanted to let you know real quick that I put together a special guitar scale practice package for all my members on Patreon. With this one you get the tabs, get the profiles, play along videos and backing tracks for today's video, as well as many more practical scale exercises for your daily practice routine. Because if you're like most players, you don't really know what you should practice every single day, and you really crave an effective step-by-step routine that you can simply go through step by step in every single practice session, and you know that this will actually make you better and that you're not wasting your time. So if you're feeling stuck in a rut right now, you're always playing the same riffs and licks all the time, and you want an effective roadmap with a 100% guaranteed success rate that gets you from where you are right now, which might be a frustrated self-taught guitar player, to where you want to be, effortlessly playing your favorite guitar solos, your favorite songs and riffs, just download this complete practice package today with the link in the description or in the first comment, patreon.com/bernd. I promise that this is what you've been looking for all this time, a super simple step-by-step method that will finally introduce structure and progress into your guitar practice routine. Stop wasting your time and download it today on Patreon. Now here's the next exercise I want to show you. Alright, as you could probably see, this one follows the same approach from the first exercise, but it kind of sounds even more interesting, right? Because instead of working with sixths, we're working with sevenths right here. Now, outside of jazz, fusion, and maybe blues as well, of course, you don't really hear sevenths that much. So this would be a minor seventh interval, and at the end you could hear a major seventh interval. They are quite dissonant, as you can hear, and you can mostly find them in the aptly called seventh chords that give you jazzy or bluesy kind of sound compared to the quote-unquote regular minor and major chords. But today we're not really talking about chords. We want to see how those intervals sound like when we work with them within the scale. So once again, here are the notes of the G minor scale, and we're doing the exact same thing that we did for the first exercise, but this time we're counting up 7 notes instead of 6. So for the first note, for G, if I want my 7th interval, I'm counting up G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. So this is my 7th interval, and that's a minor 7th. So the first 2 notes of the exercise, already really interesting. Then for A, I'm counting up A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, and G. So another minor 7th interval. So the exercise so far. And then for B flat, I'm counting up 7 notes again. So B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, and A. So this time I have a major 7th interval. So minor 7th, minor 7th, major 7th. And for the full exercise that I showed you, I just moved this pattern through the entire scale. To me that sounds really cool already, because you don't hear 7ths in rock and metal that much, especially not in guitar licks. So to give you an idea once again of how this could sound like, not in an exercise context, but in a more practical context, let's check out the next exercise I prepared for you. Alright, so as you could hopefully see and hear, this is really interesting when it comes to improvising and writing guitar solos. We are already very far away from just playing linear guitar licks, so descending or ascending in a scale. And a lick like the one I just played for you sounds much more complicated than it actually is. It has that really cool fusion-like advanced sound, because I'm skipping between strings once again, and I'm basing this on 7ths. So that's the first half of this exercise or lick. where I'm just playing the 7th in the scale, followed by a simple scale line. So at the end, I do think a little bit more linear in the scale, but this little chunk alone is super interesting for me. On one hand, I think the string skipping aspect is super interesting. You don't hear that much in this context. Most of the time, you have like a scale phrase on the G string and just one note on a higher string, and you would call that a string skipping lick, which is technically accurate. But constantly skipping between the notes of intervals is super interesting to me, and it sounds much more advanced, I'd say. And the second half is based on 7ths once again. And with this lick, my main focus was showing you that you don't always, of course, have to play the lower note first, followed by the interval approach that you're going for. It can also sound really cool once you turn that around and you play the higher note of the desired interval first. So starting with the 7th and then playing the original scale note that you're thinking away from. And for the last exercise, I have another really cool and very practical trick for you. I think this is gonna be really interesting for all the shredders out there. Check out how cool that sounds. Alright, so this is the only lick that's not in the G minor scale. This one is based around the G harmonic minor scale. And what I want to talk about here real quick is that it's very important to familiarize yourself with the characteristic notes in each scale. Because when most players tend to learn new scales and sounds, let's say you never really heard about the harmonic minor scale or you never really practiced it, they go for this very common approach, of course. So playing it from the lowest note and ascending and then descending, learning the one scale box they will memorize for the rest of their life. Maybe they remember that the starting note is the root note, so when they want to play the A harmonic minor scale instead of the G harmonic minor scale, they just move it up 2 frets, or when they want to play the E harmonic minor scale, they move it up here to E on the 12th fret. But sadly, a lot of players don't memorize or learn about the most important notes in the scale. So which note do you actually have to accent to bring out the sound of the harmonic minor scale? If you watched some of my videos already, you know that it's one of my favorite scales ever, and I talk about it quite a lot. It's the 7th note in the scale that gives you that awesome harmonic minor sound. That's also the only different note that you have when you compare it to the G minor scale. So when we check out the G harmonic minor scale and the G minor scale right here, consider it's just the 7th note that's different here. And with this last exercise and lick, I just wanted to show you a practical use of this information. Why is it so important? Even with a basic shred lick like this, that's very formulaic, I can choose that important note in the scale and I can circle it and really accent it to really bring out the sound of the harmonic minor scale. So I'm playing really cool lick, and you can clearly hear that I'm accenting this note really hard. All of the other notes are kind of muted a bit. And then another really big accent right here. And this is the exact same note, it's just 1 octave lower, so I'm accenting F sharp right here and F sharp down here as well. Really cool. And then I'm focusing on this very important kind of dissonant note, but I'm resolving it to the root note, to G. Just like that. So here's the entire lick for you. So on top of the intervallic licks and tricks we talked about in this video, please also don't forget to study which notes are important to accent in the scale that you're currently practicing. Trust me, it makes all the difference when you're improvising and writing guitar solos, because you will be able to really bring out the color and sound of the scale that you're working with. Alright my friend, make sure to download the full brand new guitar scale practice package that I made for my patrons on patreon.com/bernd. As I mentioned, this one includes very helpful play-along videos so that you can practice together with me in your next guitar practice routine. You get the backing tracks for all the exercises, guitar profiles, and also PDF tab sheets. This is a really awesome, very simple step-by-step approach when it comes to practicing guitar scales and really memorizing them. You will learn some really cool practical patterns that you can immediately steal and use for your own music. And you will also know which notes sound really good and which notes you want to accent and which notes you want to avoid, although they're technically correct. So if you enjoyed this video just a little bit, you will love this special package that I put together for you. Get it right now with the link down below. below, patreon.com/Bernd. Join the world's biggest guitar community on Patreon. If you're still not part of it, what are you waiting for? Join us today. I'm waiting for you over there. Have an awesome day and greetings from Vienna. Bye bye.